Hey, welcome to the Citizen Mike Show. Thanks for tuning in. We do appreciate it. My name is Mike Burdinsky, and somewhere on that split screen is Christina Tatta, Republican Town Councilor. Christina, welcome back to the show.
Thank you.
I think the last time you and I met, when I opened the show, I introduced you as Christine Tatta, and you immediately dashed off an angry email to me. How dare you? And so I kind of had to fix it. I think that was the opening, like the opening 30 seconds or something. And
Yes,
I don't know if you watched the remake of that show, but I had to put a slide up and say, no, her name is
your
really,
biggest pet peeve.
it is really Christina. Hey, we got a lot of business to get to today. Some big developments, a big change in the Arpa law, the federal rule that the federal legislation that allows $13 million to come to Wallingford to spend to address COVID. Also, a new grand list is out. The audit has been released since we talked last. So we got a lot of big things. But I first want to get to the change in the federal law, the Arpa law. And I think it was just this week that you counselors got a memo from, I guess, the law department, and it announced that the final legislation was in place, and it had to do with a standard deduction of 10 million or something. I read that too, but give us your view of what that 10 million is all about and what the big excitement should be.
Sure.
Yeah.
The memo came from the law department, and the memo didn't say much. It just basically said the final rule from the U.S. Treasury has been divulged, and then attached to the memo was a multiple-page PowerPoint presentation that I believe the United States Treasury provided for towns to guide them with the ARPA money. And the big takeaway, or the big thing that we saw, was that it looks like $10 million, the first 10 million, and Wallingford's getting 13 total. But the first 10 million, they really lessened the restrictions on that money. So basically, it looks like $10 million can be spent basically however we want. Formerly, we had thought maybe there were some restrictions and things you could spend it and couldn't spend it, but it looks like now $10 million is free and clear, pretty much however we want to spend it, with a few exclusions.
Yeah, this is a big deal. This is a very big deal. About a month ago, it was thought that Wallingford would have a free hand to spend ARPA money only if it had a revenue loss. And I remember you at the last council meeting asked our comptroller, hey, what's the revenue loss? Because to the extent of this revenue loss, maybe it's only $500,000, maybe it's only $1 million, maybe it's only $2 million. Under the old rule, you only had a free hand with the amount of the revenue loss, but now it's a standard deduction, 10 million bucks. We can use it any way we want to, which is a big change and takes a lot of the angst out of it. Remember that back in the fall is, can we use it for fire trucks? And the mayor would say, well, we have to follow strict regulations. Can we use it for parks and open space? Well, we have to follow strict regulations. Can we use it for other capital projects? And the mayor would always say, no, it's strictly controlled. No more. 10 million bucks for government services, things we've traditionally spent money on. This could mean that there wouldn't have to be a tax increase this coming year, because you could put ARPA money into the budget and get rid of that tax increase. I'm not suggesting that's the best way, but it's an intriguing idea. Sure. Your thoughts on that possibility?
Sure. Yeah, my only two budgets, I think everybody saw that I was a big fan of not increasing taxes, and in fact we lowered them a little bit last budget. So I'm definitely interested in looking at that. And I kind of thought all along, even before this rule, that maybe we could do that by spending it on certain things that would have increased the tax rate. So if we have a big government project that everybody's going to have to pay taxes in, if we can use some of this money for that, then we reduce taxes that way. So I'm definitely interested in this new change. And
so now it's possible. Now it's really possible. I just want to read from some of the literature that you guys got about this final rule. So I'm reading now from what you guys received. The final federal rule offers a standard allowance for revenue loss of up to $10 million, allowing recipients to select between a standard amount of revenue loss or a complete full revenue loss calculation. And if you pick the standard deduction, I'm going to just turn the page, it ends up a standard allowance of up to 10 million in the aggregate is permitted, that you can buy fire trucks or use it for open space, whatever you want to do. And there's some examples given. I'm going to turn to that page. And this said, you can spend this $10 million on government services, any service traditionally provided by a government, construction of schools and hospitals, road building and maintenance, other infrastructure, health and other services, environmental remediation, provision for fire, police, other public safety services, including purchase of fire trucks and police vehicles. So kind of anything goes. You guys have a meeting coming up, council meeting, and ARPA is going to be on the agenda. What's going to happen, do you think?
Yes, so on our meeting on February 8th, this coming Tuesday, actually the only agenda item besides the consent agenda and an executive session is to discuss this. And the mayor is who put it on the agenda. And it also says that the consultant will be there to discuss this. So this will be the first time that we're meeting with the consultant. So that's a big development. The council has not met with the consultant. We haven't had the opportunity to ask him or her questions. So that will be, I think, an interesting discussion.
What do you hope to come out of it? Is there anything specific you want to accomplish?
I'm hoping that we get some clarification or more direction on what we can spend the money on. But again, like we said, with this new rule, that doesn't seem to be as big of an issue anymore. But I would like to see the direction we're going, because it seems like applications to apply to get some of this money for agencies may have already been created, and it looks like we may see those on Tuesday. So I'm interested to see where we are, where the mayor wants this to go, and to hear from the council where we think we want it to go, especially in light of this new rule.
Yeah, I've been sort of unhappy with the progress of how things are going and the extent to which the mayor has let you guys in to the decision-making process. And it seems like the mayor is sort of laying this out piecemeal and not being very forthcoming about what his plans are. Although early in the game, he said, well, we're going to prioritize grants to businesses. And he said that several occasions. And so I would think that's still where he's going. But the decision on how to use the money and the conditions that could be attached, that rests solely with the council. I mean, the mayor could put a suggested list together and put a whole program together, say, here's the applications, here's the criteria. I want the money to go to businesses, vote yes or no. But it doesn't have to be that way, or does it? What's your view of that?
I don't think it does. I think that's the way it's kind of been going, but I don't think it needs to go that way. And I was just reading in the Record Journal today that in Cheshire, their town council has been deciding how to spend the money, and they just spent $2 million, I think, for their new town green that they're building. So, we'll see Tuesday what's going on, but I do think the council needs to play a bigger role in this. And so hopefully we'll kind of clarify that on Tuesday.
Yeah, now there's no more of a reason to delay because the consultant's been on board for a while. I want to change the subject temporarily to the new grand list, which just came out, because there's an interconnection between the ARPA money and the grand list and taxes and the subjects we've been talking about. The new grand list showed that real estate values went down a little bit. That's not a good thing. The personal property valuation went down. That's not a good thing because that's the tax base we're talking about. But the motor vehicle grand list went up about 25%. Cars are worth a lot more these days. Why don't you take it from there? What's going on with that?
Sure. As you know, I work in the auto industry, and car prices, vehicle prices have been through the roof. Inventory is very low and prices are very high. Some dealerships, just to get inventory, are paying more for used cars than people paid for them new. It's been crazy to see over the past year or so. So I think what we're seeing here is a result of that. The motor vehicles are worth more because of this kind of supply and demand. The chip shortage has been a huge supply issue. And so I think we're seeing that. But in regards to the entire grand list, the problem is I feel like this is temporary because the prices of the motor vehicles aren't going to stay this way forever. And so if the personal property is going down and the real estate is going down, the motor vehicle isn't going to make up for that in the long run, I don't think. So we're okay for this year, but I don't think that's a permanent change.
Yeah, so the bottom line is that there'll be about $2.7 million in extra revenue raised by the overall increase, thanks to the pop in the motor vehicle value. So you guys, without raising the mill rate, will have an extra $2.7 million to spend, $2,665,000 to be more precise. If you own a car and it's worth about $20,000, expect the assessment on your car to go up about 25%. And so you're going to be paying more on your car taxes, but that's probably only going to be about $100 to $150 or so, depending on the value of your car. But your car bill is going to be higher just because of this increased valuation. So I think some of the assessors across the state are kind of worried about the reaction of car owners that don't own real estate to see their tax bills go up a little bit. But that gives you about $2.7 million to play with just because of the increase there. And now you have 10 million of ARPA money free and clear. So if there was a real tax hawk out there, they could say, let's reserve maybe 3 million in ARPA money until further modification is necessary, combined with that new revenue generated by the grand list. So we set aside, 3 million of ARPA money. Maybe you don't have taxes at all, a tax increase at all. And if you don't need all of that 3 million, then you just reduce it at a later time. But that would be an example of how that could work. So the new audit came out for fiscal year ending June 30, 2021. And this budget that resulted in these financial results was passed in May of 2020. So what you did, Christina Tatta, what you did in 2020 led to these financial results, which was a deficit of $1.692 million from the fund balance, and the fund balance dropped by that amount. We're going to go into more detail about that, and we're going to play a video clip of the mayor in just a second. But just leaving it there, what do you think about that 1.692 operating deficit because of the budget you guys passed in 2020?
Yeah, I don't think anybody's ever happy with a deficit, but there had been a lot of discussions the past few years about the general fund getting to be a little bit too high, and so a reduction in the general fund of 1.6 is not the end of the day, because there's still ample amount in there. Besides that, I guess I was very happy with that budget, the fact that we were able to keep taxes flat that year. And so if this is the result, some years you end up with a surplus, some years you have a deficit. And I just think we just need to, keep an eye on it, but I'm not alarmed by it or overly concerned.
So let's go back to 2020. We're going to try to rewind our mental clock and bring back some old and favorite memories of yours. And during this debate of the 2020 budget, where the council was trying to hold the mill rate flat, the mayor got very upset. And the mayor got very upset because you guys were going to go into the fund balance for more money to help balance the budget. You're going to do some department expenses. You're going to look at money going to the capital non-recurring fund and use these tools to come up with a flat mill rate, which saved the taxpayers money, resulted in a little deficit, well, a $1.7 million deficit. And the mayor was very upset. I have a video clip of his speech, and here's some of what he says before I play it. He says, there goes our credit rating. If you pass that budget, well, that didn't happen. He says, services are going to get cut. It's kind of a scare tactic. If you do this, council, services are going to get cut. He said that in 2020. That didn't come to pass. He said, the minute you depart from what the mayor's been doing, you're going to run into trouble. Well, I mean, life still goes on, and we've hardly noticed the difference. He said, every dollar that you spend from reserves, and that year, I think you took $7.9 million from the fund balance. He says, every dollar you take out of there is going to mean a increase in taxes the following year. And of course, that wasn't true. Then he had this doom and gloom scenario where he accused you guys of playing games. And he said that you were ripping capabilities from the capital non-recurring fund, which still has plenty of money in it and more money than it's really spending. And there's other money sort of out of that fund that can be used and just isn't. So he had a lot of complaints, and he said you were falling into a trap. Let's play that video, and we'll talk about it on the other side. Here we go. 3, 2, 1.
Mayor wants to cut in.
Yeah, I find a lot of this very troublesome. I've had a few years watching this, and we never seem to learn. Every year, there's reserves that go into the budget. But that means taxpayers are saving money, because if we didn't have those reserves, that money would have to come from taxes.
Or spending cut.
The year that we don't have money restored, that's when there will be a tax increase, unless you cut services. If everyone wants to be accountable for the services that get cut, then fine. But I suspect no one's going to want to be accountable for the fact that we don't have public works doing something, or we don't have the health department doing something, or whatever the issue might be. We can identify, oh yeah, there was $7 million. We cut it down from 7 million because money did get used up and we lost a AAA credit rating. People who know about how these budgets work, watch. And the minute you depart from something that would be an acceptable way of handling public money, then their red light goes on and they say, oh, well, we're not going to back it to that extent. We're at 7.4 million. I hope we don't have to spend that, because every dollar we have to spend to that will mean a tax increase next year. Will that money get replaced? Right now, we can think, oh, gee, everything could turn around quickly, or it might not. What do the odds say? We've got over 500,000 people in Connecticut unemployed. How quickly do you think they're all going to be employed again? We're in serious times, and it's not time to play games with public money and figure, oh, we'll get more money than we expect. We have people now who can take 3 months to pay their tax bill. We're not going to be sure what's going to be happening. I would expect a lot of businesses may not be able to pay anything. I know businesses that can't start up because education is a question mark. They do all their ancillary work for higher education. They can't do a thing. They won't know until they know what colleges are coming in. These are serious times. So we're very risky at 7.4 million. We're way above where we'd like to be. And now we talk about increasing that. Now we talk about ripping the capabilities out of the cap and non that allows us to do capital projects. Every town in the state could have a cap and non project. All they have to do is take the money they receive in annual tax payments from utility installations, be it Eversource, be it Avangrid, be it whatever, the South Central Regional Water Authority. They could take that money and start their own cap and non, not use it for operational costs and have something for capital needs, but they don't do it. This town was smart enough years ago to start that. And now we're going to make that inoperable, because if you take the money once, that creates a gap for the next year. And from then on, it becomes a nice place to just grab money, and you have no program anymore. What do the people depend upon? I think they've depended upon, the people and businesses in this town have depended upon our approach, it's been council and mayor, our approach to how to responsibly deal with public money. And I think that is a proven track record year after year. Now we're in tough times, and we're going to change the formula that has worked, really. So you want to adopt the state's program? What other community's program would you like to adopt? By what's being stated, you're making a good effort to replicate what others have tried, and in my opinion, has not come close to the success that we've had in Wallingford. Be careful what you wish for, because the traps are both known and unknown, and they aren't fun.
Christina, do you remember that speech? Do you remember that? Does that bring back nice memories for you, where you got lectured like that?
Yeah, I do remember.
Well, are you duly chagrined and remorseful and penitent, and what's going on?
No, I mean, I think like you said before, it kind of worked out, but I do think the mayor he genuinely is nervous about those things happening. I think he thinks he does a good job with his budgets, and I think it was genuine fear. But the other thing too is we have to remember what year this was. So this was 2020, and some people call it the rainy day fund. And so if 2020 wasn't the rainy day, I don't know what is. So the fact that we ended up with a $1.6 million deficit during a global pandemic and economic recession and everything else that was going on is not too bad, because that's not that far out of line with years past.
So I've got some images I want to put up on the screen. It's going to help us explain what the financial results were for fiscal year ending in 2021. And the first slide I want to put up, just for context and information, is a 5-year history of the surplus and deficit. It goes back to 2017 and brings us up to 2021. And we can see that in 4 of those 5 years, there was an operating deficit. There was a surplus in one of those years. If you net all of that out, the net deficit was about 2.4 million. And that would be the amount that the rainy day fund dropped. So that's sort of the context. A lot of people think that every year we run a deficit. Every year we run a surplus, and that it's surplus after surplus after surplus. But that is really not the case. The general fund hasn't really moved that much, over the years, and this chart just lays that out in writing. The next one I want to put up is a pie chart that explains a little bit about what the general fund is. And when we talk about, amounts in there, what are we talking about? In this particular pie chart, I'm going to start from the top. There's a non-spendable amount of $523. That's like prepaid gasoline or other things. Hey, let's move on. There's another slice of the pie on the upper portion. It's called committed. It's part of the general fund, but in that committed section of that pie slice is the Board of Ed's 2% fund. So to the extent that the Board of Ed's 2% fund grows, the general fund balance grows. If you want to shrink the general fund balance, well, one way to do it is to shrink the Board of Ed's 2% fund. I just wanted to point that out, the interplay between the board's 2% fund and the general fund. Here it is. Now, as we move down to the right, 7,900,000 has been assigned to the budget year that we're in. And what does that mean? That means that under the budget that was passed in 2020, $7,900,000 was assigned from the rainy day fund. Some people say taken from, it never leaves, but it was assigned from the rainy day fund and spread among the department budgets. That means that if you want to break even, you've got to replace that 7.9 million. You got to make up that money somehow, either through extra revenues you weren't sure you're going to get or savings on departments. But it's a big number to assign 7.9 million from the rainy day fund and spread it among all the departments for them to legally spend. And then what's left over after all these little pieces of pie are taken out, including the amount for encumbrances, is a general fund balance of 26,882,000. Well, 5 years ago in 2017, it was only $1 million more. It was 27,830,000. So over 5 years, with all these deficits and surpluses and whatever, the general fund balance has stayed about level. Christina, I want to ask you about this unassigned balance and its connection to the credit rating. What's your thoughts on that?
You know, we hear with every budget, pretty much every budget year, that we need to have a certain amount in unassigned to keep our credit rating at the highest. And then a couple of years ago, we did drop one notch in our credit rating, and some made the claim that maybe we're using too much of that balance. But I haven't heard ever, and I would love to know the number, and I don't think it exists, but I would love to know what the number is that we need to keep in there. Is it a % of the budget? Is it a dollar amount? And I don't know that that number exists because I'm not sure. I don't think for the credit ratings it exists. I don't know that from the finance office it exists. I think it's kind of a judgment call. But it would be great to say, you know, the town of Wallingford thinks we need 7% of our budget in unassigned, you know, in the rainy day fund or unassigned, but we never seem to get an answer to that.
Yeah, the correspondence from the comptroller's office and the mayor's office that accompanied the information about the year-end financial results never mentioned the credit rating. In prior years, the comptroller would say a certain part of that unassigned balance, in some cases, all of the unassigned balance is going to be held to support the credit rating. This year, not a mention of that. And I expect there's another shoe going to drop that somewhere in this discussion about year-end financial results, someone is going to shake their fist about don't touch the unassigned fund balance because it's got to support the credit rating. I don't know. The silence about this credit rating discussion is a little surprising, and it breaks the mold. Every year we hear about the credit rating and how much of that fund balance is committed to supporting it. Let's move on to another slide because we were talking about the unassigned fund balance. And this is what it's looked like over the years. Back in 2017, it was about $4 million more than it was year-end 2021. I'm not sure the significance of that, but I just want to put it into context that this is what's happened to the unassigned fund balance. Of course, I'm going to bring that pie chart back a little bit for a second. It's up on the screen now. If you put less in, if that 7.9 million assigned to the budget was less, unassigned fund balance will go up. You know, so this unassigned fund balance can be massaged a little bit, just depending on what's happening with respect to the rest of the budget. The last slide is this one, the top department budgets with the most money left over. And I ranked them by the most to the least, the top 9 departments. And you can see the Board of Ed is the section of town of government that had most of the money left over. And I wonder what would have happened. Well, I do know what would have happened if they didn't run a surplus of 1.34 million. If they broke even, you know, we would have had, in addition to the deficit of 1.3, we would have had a $3 million operating deficit. So the Board of Ed kind of saved the numbers for us by running a surplus. But look at these other departments. They had money left over, and I guess the temptation would be, let's cut them next year. Let's cut those budgets, and that way they won't have money left over. Is there a danger in doing that?
Sure.
Yeah, tell me.
Yes. the danger is so that for example, in the pie chart, if we go back to the pie chart, the 7.9 million that's assigned to the budget, everybody knows we're not using that 7.9 million. We will not come close to that. And if we did, it would be fairly catastrophic because you'd be losing a huge chunk of the reserves. And so I think that we kind of, when you look at the budgets year after year, you know that there are going to be departments that every year come in under budget, but that then offsets that 7.9 million. So I think it's expected, that you see these same ones come up: Public Works, Police, Board of Ed. You see them year after year. Finance, they always have surpluses.
Yeah, so back to this chart, the top 9 department budgets with the most money left over, I guess a way of looking at it, they've got to have that kind of money left over. They've got to have it because we have to find $7 million plus in savings in order to prevent a deficit. So I think the way the budget is always constructed is certain departments will always be overfunded. That's in large part intentional because we have to make up the gap and recover the $7.9 million to avoid a $7.9 million deficit. If revenues come in a little higher than anticipated, that's okay too. So for example, on employee insurance, I think that's always an overfund. I don't want to use the word overfunded, but they always have more money in the budget than they spend because I think the town always budgets as if they're going to be fully employed all year and they never are. And that's very predictable. I've heard Jim Bowe say when he was here at Comptroller that a lot of towns budget for 95% employment because that's a more accurate tracking of the employee insurance expense. And the same goes with the pension. Year after year, there's more money left over in the pension line item than we need for the same reason. The assumptions are, well, we're going to be fully employed all year, but that's never the case. And so all of this money is left over. But if it's not, we run into trouble. And that's a confusing thing for a lot of folks to see. You have all this money left over in employee insurance, pension, police, public works. Why don't you return it to the taxpayers? Well, you can't, because if you did, you wouldn't cover that $7.9 million gap. So a lot of moving parts to the budget. I wanted to talk about the police a little bit. They always have more money in their budgets than they spend year after year after year. The excuse is people retired. We couldn't get people out of the academy, can't hire police fast enough. But the track record of the police department budget is such they always have a lot of money left over, but that is a safe place to stash the extra cash you need to make up for the amount you take out of the fund balance, because no one wants to look carefully at the police department budget and say we're going to reduce it. Defund the police? No, not doing that in Wallingford. So that $937,000, which is up there on that screen now, that is safe. They just need other departments to follow suit and also have big savings too.
And they do, if I could just jump in there though, they do, these departments, police, they do legitimately have open, openings. So the police would like more officers and they can't find them. And I know the finance department has been short staffed and we hear it. So again, it's not that, nobody's looking at this or they're purposely adding positions to store money away. It's just a fact of the matter. Like you said, you'll never be at 100% in a municipality. The staffing will never be at 100%. So they budget as if they were staffed at 100%.
Yep. We talked a few minutes ago about the capital non-recurring fund. The capital non-recurring fund is money is comprised of money that originates from the electric division, and it stops momentarily in the general fund, and then the town council appropriates money out of the general fund into the capital non-recurring fund, which funds roads, bridges, big ticket items dealing with improvements of land. The mayor said that if you touch that capital non-recurring fund, which you guys have done in the last 2 years to give some tax relief, then the whole project falls apart. The whole careful, meticulous cautious, conservative planning of funding capital projects. He says it all falls down. Is that true?
I think if it were happening every single year and it was, it got to be a habit to take money from that, we could be in trouble. But the years that we did it, there was extra money sitting in there that we were able to identify. And so to get that money out of there, we brought it out, and we were able to, provide some tax relief with that. But I mean, I wouldn't want to do that every single year. So I do agree with the mayor there. It's the cap and non is a great account to have, but you don't want extra money sitting in there either, because that's taxpayers' money.
Yeah. Well, it'd be nice to know exactly what was in the capital non-recurring account now, how much has been spent over the last, 12 months, and just how it's tracking, where do we stand? And the importance of that, I think, was recognized last year by the Wallingford Town Council, and they voted, I think it was unanimous, I'm not really sure, I don't remember anymore. But they voted unanimously to pass an ordinance because they were having trouble getting this information without an ordinance. So they passed an ordinance, the council did, which was intended to help the council be informed about what was in the capital non-recurring fund. And that report was due February 1, a couple of days ago. And of course you have that, right?
No, sir.
Oh, what? Tell me, what went wrong? You don't, it's an ordinance, it's a law. The town is supposed to give you a report. How hard is that? What happened?
I don't know yet. I'm going to contact the comptroller's office tomorrow and ask nicely when we think we'll be getting that. So yeah, we should have had it on Monday.
So I know Wallingford loves technology, and I've developed a new app that will solve this problem for you. And the app goes something like this. I was able to work this out in rehearsal. I'm not sure I can get all the words together, but the app goes like this. It goes, "Hey Siri, yes Mike, print out the most current report on the capital and non-recurring fund and email it to all counselors except Christina Tatta." Yes, Mike, why not Christina Tatta? Because she's given the comptroller a hard time and I don't want her to get it. Yes, Mike, that will be out tomorrow. So it seems to me with Siri's capability, or Alexa with Amazon, I think Amazon has Alexa, say, "Hey, Alexa, buy me a roll of toilet paper," and Alexa ships it to you right away. I think that technology probably exists. All we got to do is sort of develop it for the town of Wallingford, and Tim Cena could issue these voice commands, and Siri would print these out automatically. I mean, with a couple of well-placed clicks of the mouse, he could run, a report on the status of the capital non-recurring fund. But if that's too hard for him, we'll get him this Hey Siri app. What do you think? Is that?
He would need Wi-Fi for that, so that's out too. But yeah, I know he's, when I asked for the revenue loss we talked about before, he was, he kind of told me it's on a long to-do list, and now we didn't get this report. So, I'm trying to give him the benefit of the doubt. He's new and he's short-staffed, but I really we kind of need this info. So I'll ask nicely.
You mentioned Wi-Fi. We didn't have a chance to discuss this in preparing for the show, but it triggered a memory, and I just wanted to tell you this story. And back in December, we did a show featuring Peachtree Corners, Georgia, and how they were handling their ARPA money. And they were way ahead of us, and they had websites that showed applications for various categories of money and criteria, what it would take to get some of this grant money. And I had occasion to talk to them over the phone a few days ago. They're coming on the show next week. And they told me about one of these uses, and here's the connection to Wi-Fi. They said that what they decided to do in a particular section of town that was underserved and had a little higher crime rate was to put in new street lights, new poles with street lights. And on top of the street lights, or somewhere on the pole, would be a camera, a surveillance camera, to help the police out and the crime rates and make the streets feel safer. But also, they would have little Wi-Fi hotspots, or I don't know the technological word for it, but each street pole would have little Wi-Fi gimmicks on it. So everyone living up and down the street that may not be able to afford high-speed internet would have these Wi-Fi connections all up and down the street. And I think there was a couple of streets. Just an imaginative use of what this ARPA money, can do. I mean, we could do some tax relief. We could do some Wi-Fi. You mentioned it, hey, Miss Siri. So I think exciting times are upon us with this $13 million, 10 million of which we can do whatever we want with. Hey, let's call it quits and make that the final word. Thanks again for coming on the Citizen Mike Show. I want to thank our viewers for watching too. We've got a lot of material thrown at you. Christina, thanks for coming on. See you back next time. And viewers, thanks for watching. Good night, everybody.